There are a lot of real estate investors that say you never sell your real estate, and if you do, you 1031 until you die. And that's am I right? I mean, that's what they say.
Because when you die, the most beautiful thing in the world happens, which is all of your assets go through your estate, and if your estate is less than $14 million or 28 if you're married, it all gets stepped up and passed on to your heirs. So
tax-free.
Tax-free, yes. Right. I didn't make the tax code, but this is just how it works.
This is why the rich keep getting richer, guys. If you're focusing on how to use the rules and the codes to your advantage like the wealthy people do, you get wealthy this way. Take advantage of tax deductions, making a way to make it happen, and you can do it too.
I've met 100 people in the last 5 years who have completely changed their lives on one real estate deal.
Mitchell Baldridge, thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we have a broad audience. Everybody's interested in real estate on this channel. That's what we talk about. And you're a CPA. You help people save money on taxes that own real estate. So I'm hoping that we can dive into what that looks like for people that are investors or wanting to invest in a rental property, or maybe even make it their primary residence and house hack, or maybe have tenants and other units. And then talk a little bit about why a lot of homeowners don't get tax breaks and why they keep taking things away, like how much you can deduct of your mortgage interest payment. You can't deduct your real estate taxes. We'll kind of go over that so everybody can get a real flavor of what owning real estate is really about from a tax savings or implication standpoint. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. So yeah, I'm Mitchell Baldridge. I'm a CPA. I'm a financial planner from Houston, Texas. And we have a kind of good old fashioned accounting practice in Houston. But then beyond that, we work with a lot of real estate syndicators. So we work with folks who, go raise capital, raise debt, buy apartment buildings, buy self-storage, industrial, all kinds of asset classes. And then I'm a partner in a business called RE Cost Seg, where we do cost segregation studies for real estate investors that are out there. So yeah, we can talk about why real estate. We can talk about kind of what's happened in this new tax bill and how folks save money by buying real estate. It's a great business.
Well, certainly a lot of people have been buying up single family rentals. That has really impacted a lot of our audience in a negative way because they're competing with these investors, these syndicators. I know that we do need them, a fair amount of single family rentals. I prefer personally ma and pa landlords than I do these big corporate giants that have been gobbling up all of this single family inventory. But why don't we just kind of start with giving a breakdown on how does someone buying, and we won't make it from more of a large syndicator because that's not the bulk of our audience. We don't have funds watching us, I don't think. These REITs are these large investment funds that are buying up this property. But let's kind of take it from a mom and pop. I want to dive into a couple different things just so guys, you understand sort of what we're going to cover. First, we're going to talk about the real estate aspect of it. And then we're going to dive in and ask Mitchell, well, what happens if you own a business too? If you're a business operator, owner-operator, should you be buying the building that your business rents from you? Should that be something? So we'll get to that point, but let's start off with just the basics on why does the government favor a real estate investor more than they do a homeowner that lives there as an owner-occupant?
Yeah. So, I don't know why the government works the way the government works. We won't get to the bottom of that on this call today, because if they put me in charge, some things would be different. But here we are, and we have the rules they give us, and the rules of the game are I have this kind of motto of owning a small business is the best tax deal in America. Like, if you show up to work every day and you earn a W-2, when you go home and you pay your internet bill and you pay your cell phone bill and you pay your car bill to get to and from work and your health insurance, that is all kind of uh, below the line. You earn money, you pay tax, and then you go pay all your expenses. Well, when you become a business owner, like you, like me, you go to work and you have all these expenses like personal education and home use of your office and business use of your office and business use of your automobile. Those all become deducted before you go pay Uncle Sam. And real estate is a similar. So all of this is a weighing system or an incentive system where the government wants people to do certain things, and so they try to incentivize them accordingly. You know, we have this whole physical world around us that costs a ton of money to build and maintain and keep going. And you know, it, the folks with capital and the folks willing to take risk, willing to go take debt on out there today, get incentivized in a large part because of these tax benefits. So if you go, or buy a apartment building or a single family home to go rent or go Airbnb out there today, you take some form of equity and then you borrow some chunk of money from a bank. And single family homes are very easy to go borrow against with banks. They're the kind of most commoditized real estate loan product there is out there. You can go borrow money for 30 years and pay it monthly. You can't really go borrow money like that in any other business. And so I think part of why the single family home has been um, become the kind of like, what would I say, the like easiest thing to go buy and rent and go become a landlord just with a single family home is because there's just so much free debt and you can leverage it so far. And especially when interest rates were low, you could go take a little bit of money, borrow a ton of money, have a pretty low payment, and go get a renter and just cover your mortgage. It's a simple business model. But why people love to do it is because the government gives you this big write-off year one, and you can basically take your equity and almost deduct it like it were a retirement account, especially if you're a real estate pro. So I know that's a lot. We can unpack that.
Yeah, well, let's start with the simple, some simple questions here. If you were going out today looking for a home, you would probably look at it and say, 6.5% at today's prices, it's very unaffordable. The numbers don't make sense, especially when you just said those payments that you make are coming after your tax dollar. After you go to work, you pay your income tax, and then, right?
Right.
So, Mitchell, about a year ago, I had a rental property. I've been in residential rentals for probably 25 years or more. And I had a property that I sold. It was a 2-unit. It was an old house built in like 1907. And the upstairs was an apartment. The downstairs was an apartment. Each had their separate entrance. And it went very fast. And a owner occupant didn't end up buying it, though I was in a multiple offer situation, priced it very well to sell, and long-term tenants in there. But I had a lot of inquiries about people and contract offers from people that wanted to live in one unit and rent the next.
Sure.
So let's kind of start with that. Number one, is it legal to do that? Can you buy, would that be considered an investment property if you moved into one of the units and rented out the second unit?
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, and that becomes, there's different loan products and the mechanics of how to do that. But just from an IRS standpoint, yeah, the moment you start collecting rent for a piece of property, you're a landlord. So if that's a garage apartment or a upstairs downstairs duplex or some kind of multiplex, you're in the business and you are renting out you've placed into service a part of the property, and you're living in a part of the property. And one thing that you mentioned earlier was about never really even becoming a landlord and a real estate investor, but just owning your own home. And owning your own home is a fantastic way to make tax-free money if you make money on the house. I mean, so house hacking or so when I was 25 years old, we bought a beat up old townhouse that had a big leaking water heater, and we fixed it up and rode a great wave of real estate prices going up. But we sold that thing and made a pretty good amount of money. And this Section 121 exemption that's out there today with the IRS, it's been out there for a long time, allows a single person to exempt $250,000, or a married couple to exempt $500,000 of gain on a personal residence. So you buy it for $250, you put $50 into it, you're $300 into it as a basis. You go sell it for $600 and you're married, you pay zero tax on that. So the IRS doesn't give many exemptions. You get an exemption if you get in a car accident and you break your arm and they give you some money. You get an exemption for a few little reasons, and this home sale exemption is one. And so you had to buy a property and own it and live in it for 2 of the last 5 years and then go sell it. So that's just kind of the base way to go, make money in real estate, just as a regular person.
And
Yeah.
Mitchell, you could do that 2 times in a row, and then the third time's a reset. So you talk about that a little bit, because I know a lot of people that did that. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I just wanted to take a brief minute and share some exciting news. I have just released my new Todd Simple home buying course. This course is designed for anyone wanting to know how to buy a home. It's designed to take you through the entire home buying process from start to finish. You'll learn how to represent yourself should you want to avoid paying real estate commissions, the best ways to shop for a home, how to avoid costly mistakes, what to look for when touring a home, negotiation tactics, and so much more. In this home buying course, I hold nothing back. In fact, I would go to say that no one has uncovered the home buying process like I have. I've even made a way for you to gift this course to your family and friends. Visit saxrealty.education. The link is also pinned in the comments below. Now back to the show.
You can do it. The way the law reads now is you can just kind of do it every 2 years. I mean, you could literally
you don't have the 3-year reset.
No. So you have to live in the home 2 of the last 5 years.
Right. So then there's a 3-year. So
yeah.
If you live in it for 2 years, you collect it, you live in the next place for 2 years, then you have to wait 3 years for it to reset.
Yeah, that's not, I think it's just you have to have lived in it for 2 of the last 5 years. So you couldn't do it like.
Yeah, but 5 years, so you can do it twice in 5 years. So it resets. It has to reset.
You couldn't. I couldn't live in a property for 2 years and then live in the next property for 2 years. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and just bang, bang, sell them both.
You can do it twice.
Year. Yeah.
You can do it twice in a row, and then it's 3 years to reset.
And then you got to take a breath and then go. Yeah,
you live in it for 3 years, because the 5th year is you can't do it in the 5th year. You have to live in it to the next reset for the next 5 years. The 2 years into that, you can do it again. So it's actually twice every 2 years, and then a 3-year reset. I've played this rodeo.
Love it. And so then, so that's the base case of just, I'm a young person, or I'm a older person, but I'm going to buy a home. I'm going to fix it up. I'm going to ride a good wave. I'm going to sell it. And I've done that twice in my life with good results of just making money and never paying tax on it. So the reason why I kind of go on that diversion is because you're talking about, now I'm going to buy a quadplex, I'm going to buy a duplex, I'm going to buy a home with a garage apartment. Well, when I start renting that half of the property out and depreciating it a bunch, that rule still stands. I can still house hack it. I can still get that exemption that's out there, but you're going to have recapture for any deduction that you take. And so, that's a good kind of intro into like, why does this whole real estate thing work? Well, again, it's because you get to go buy a piece of property, $500,000 house. You get to put $100,000 down, and you get to go borrow $400,000 from a bank, and then you get to start depreciating the home, which a home's going to depreciate no matter what. You know that if you've had a lot of homes for a long time. But the IRS gives you this table of how you're allowed to depreciate homes to where it's a paper loss. You basically get to go start depreciating the home day one. And with these new tax laws, you get to depreciate the home really, really quick if you do a cost segregation study, which we'll talk more about. But ultimately, I can go take my $100,000, borrow $400,000, buy a $500,000 home, and in some instances go depreciate $150,000 year one. And again, if I'm a pro, or if this is a short-term rental, or in certain circumstances, go offset my W-2 income and go save a bunch of tax. And so people do that. This is why people go out and buy 50 homes, because they realize this and they go, holy smokes, if the more I buy, the less I pay in tax, and I can just keep going. But
you have to make money and save money on taxes, so you have to profit. I mean, the offset is if you're not making a profit, then tax deductions do very little.
So I run through this concept of like bonus levers is how I think about it. And so when you go look at a property, this $500,000 home, the first question is, how much land versus how much improvement is there? So if it's on a cliff in Malibu and you just paid, you didn't pay $500,000 for it, but if you did, you're pretty much assuming that's all land and that this is a little shack, versus if you're in, Topeka, Kansas, where land's a little bit cheaper than Malibu, you probably have more property and less land. And then you go into this layer of, especially for cost segregation and bonus depreciation, how much of the building is the pure building that's going to be depreciated on a 27 and a half or 39-year timeline? What is the foundation and the roof and the sticks and the windows and the central HVAC, and the core electric of the building versus these shorter life properties, the carpet and certain cabinetry and refrigerators and landscaping, that when we go do a cost segregation study, we try to kind of explode what is the core part, or what is, if you paid $500,000 for this house, what did you buy? How much land did you buy? How much building did you buy? And of the building you bought, what is this long life property versus what is this short life property that's out there today? And then you get into these other kind of levers of, what is your tax rate? How much leverage do you have on it? Did you put 80% down, or did you put 20% down? And then what is the bonus depreciation rate? And that determines kind of, when you put $1 in, what is your deduction today? But to your point, if you're paying 0% tax already, don't go accelerate deductions. That's not going to do anything for you.
Yeah. So let's kind of break it down a little more. So I have a listener that says, hey, Todd, I'd like to house hack, or I would like to put myself as a property owner on the investor side of things. I want to live there, but I would rather be able to take the depreciation. I would rather be able to take the income, rent out rooms or rent out an apartment, take that income and then offset some of what I would spend and paying taxes on that money that I'm bringing in, the income, and I want those deductions so that I can keep the money, or most of the money that's coming in off of the rental, and my portion of the rental becomes paid for, or maybe I'm not paying as much, and that's the tricky part, right? Because it has to be arm's length and stuff like that. So let's just kind of dive into that a little bit. Now, when you're talking about depreciation, or depreciating the asset 27 and a half years or 39. This is the difference, ladies and gentlemen, of a commercial building. A commercial building, you depreciate the actual, the improvements over 39 years. a residential building, you can depreciate it slightly over less time,
Yeah.
27 and a half years. So we'll break that down a little bit, Mitchell. But first of all, let's get back into the semantics of if someone wants to do that, buy a house that they house hack or turning into a rental and live there, can they still buy that in their personal name? I know you're not an attorney, but they can still take advantage of an income producing property as a sole proprietor or in their personal name,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to set up LLCs, but the tax reasons are like, unless you go elect to be an S corporation, which you wouldn't do with a building, or there's reasons to make tax elections, but at just the core person buying a building, I mean, oftentimes Wells Fargo isn't going to let you go deed the house into an LLC because they have you signed the mortgage, you took an FHA loan or whatever that was. So, yeah, you're going to own this house. You're going to go get, conventional or FHA or VA or whatever financing that you're going to go get. And you're generally going to be pretty upfront with those folks. I mean, you're going to go tell your mortgage broker, "Hey, there's a garage apartment on the back of this, and I'm going to go rent that out." And they're going to go help you figure out the best loan product to do that in. So now I bought the house. I have the monthly note. I'm paying principal. I'm paying interest. I'm paying taxes. I'm paying insurance. I'm going to go tell my insurance company, by the way, "Hey, I'm renting out this back house," because there's going to be some implications there. And then I'm going to go start collecting rent from this new guy living back there, and trying to decide a proper way to allocate the interest I'm paying versus the rent I'm getting, and the insurance I'm paying versus the rent I'm getting, and the landscaping and electric. If whatever utilities look like and all that stuff, you're going to either do some per square foot basis or some better basis than per square foot to try to build a profit and loss statement of, everyone really just cares about cash. They go, "Well, my mortgage is this, and this is what I'm paying, and here's what I'm collecting, and I'm getting ahead." Well, the IRS doesn't really care that much about that because you're paying down principal on your note, and they're not going to give you a deduction for that. And, they're going to look at it a little bit of a different way, right?
But can you depreciate the entire structure? So would it be best to consider yourself as a tenant? Can you rent from yourself? Can you pay a rent payment to yourself and then that throws it into a different type of category? Or does the IRS say, no, you're living there, you can't rent from yourself?
Uh, you know, I think, with if this is a back house, it's probably, like, look, you're going to get a deduction for business property. And so when you use business property more than 50%, it becomes personal property and you don't get a deduction for that. So the easiest thing to do, if it's a duplex or if it's a house with a back house, is just depreciate the structure you're not using. Like you see this especially with airplanes, like, or business vehicles, like they have to be used more than 50% for business. So if you were
But
living in the home, sorry.
if somebody lives in the back rental in the accessory dwelling unit and rents more than 50% of it, then the whole thing becomes depreciated?
I think no, I think you really need, or the way I've always looked at it is, you can't really rent to yourself and write off the full house. You need to take this thing unit by unit by unit, and the unit that you're living in is not going to be depreciated until you ultimately move out of it, or if you're planning to do that.
But that would change if you were a LLC. Probably. I think
Yeah.
if you're an LLC, you buy it in an LLC, and then you become a tenant to that LLC. As long as you're paying it's arm's length. As long as you're paying um, a fair
Appropriate
market
rent.
rent.
Um, You know, yeah, so you you're I mean, it's really for the depreciation purpose, and I guess I'd have to look that up. I've always just kinda tried to take this approach of like, hey, when you're just living in
Yeah.
when you're living in it, it's for
Well,
especially if you want a 121 it, like, if you wanna move out and keep it as a rental and run it as a rental for forever, and you wanna take that approach for a little while, that's okay. But my general advice to people is like, hey, you get this exemption. So if you're going to sell it, within a couple of years, you may not want to do that because you
yeah,
want it
but
to be
the
your
idea is
personal
not to
risk.
sell it. But
If
the
the
idea is
idea
not to
is,
sell. First of all,
yeah,
Mitchell, let me interject here and say no one's getting $250,000 in equity in today's world in buying a house at today's prices. That's gone. Okay,
it's over.
so telling people that they get to save taxes on $250,000 in profit as a single person or $500,000 means absolutely nada right now because things are just the numbers don't even pencil out. So what I'm trying to get at here is for someone that is on the sidelines, somebody that wants to buy a home and they say, you know what, I'm renting right now. I'm paying rent to a landlord. I'd rather be paying myself as a landlord. If I can put money down. I mean, if you purchase in an LLC, you have to have a lot of cash because you have to have good money down, right? Probably
Yeah.
30% down plus closing costs to buy a full out rental property. But if you can guarantee the note with yourself as a tenant or bringing in your buddy or house hacking it or whatever, and you can convince the bank without creating a situation of bank fraud, and you don't want mortgage fraud, like a lot of people have done, saying they're going to live there and never do and get that residential mortgage. But what I'm trying to figure out is can they lease from themselves as long as it's arm's length and still have that pass through
Yeah, so, I
entity?
mean, the IRS generally ignores self-rent for personal use. So if you're gonna buy a home, if you're gonna self-rent to your business, you can depreciate it, and that's a different story, but if the self-rent sliver of this home, if it's a triplex, the third of it that you're living in, you're just not gonna depreciate until you move out of it. That's the general it won't be placed into service until if you're renting it to there's clever ways to think about it, but my general rule is if you're living in a home, you're just not depreciating at least that chunk of that. But you'll get every common area, so the whole front yard, the whole driveway, the whole everything that everyone else lives in, but this box that you have personal use of and 100% private use of, I just don't think you can depreciate that. I'd go
Gotcha.
look again at the regs, but it just wouldn't recommend it. Even if you're trying to do an arm's length rental to yourself, I wouldn't recommend that. But ultimately, if you're just going to live there forever, well, you get to depreciate out the rest of it. Or if you're going to move out, you get to go uh, depreciate it when you move out and you place it into service. So you'll get there eventually, but you just not while you're occupying it for personal use.
Yeah, I think it's important. We'll talk about the recapture aspect because a
Yeah,
lot of people I have a lot of clients through the years that have never taken the depreciation. They have accountants that are not savvy to rentals, investors. You know, they go to like H&R Block or something where people are just whatever. They're just doing their tax returns, but
sure.
they're not actually depreciating the structure over a percentage of that over 27 and a half years. But the IRS says whether you take it or not, you owe it. So if it's an income producing property, if you own a rental or you moved out of your house and you're thinking that you're skating, with this mortgage that is still a owner occupied rate and you have this really low mortgage payment, but yet it's a rental income producing property and you're reporting the income as such, then what happens is all of a sudden you sell it and you've owned it for 15 years. You haven't depreciated it over 27 and a half years. It's not fully depreciated. Now all of a sudden you have a recapture even though you didn't take it. Can you just talk about that?
Yeah, that's a crazy scenario, which you don't see every day, but you see it sometimes. It's just either they didn't know or they thought they were being very, very conservative by not depreciating your property. And it's kind of one of those things where you have to be, I don't want to say dumb. Nobody's dumb, but you just have to be unknowledgeable for 15 years that you were supposed to be depreciating your real estate. And then you wake up and become knowledgeable when you go to sell it. It's just a bad, like you would almost be sleepwalk all the way through life rather than, learn of your mistake. But yeah, the IRS puts recapture on, and this happens in other ways of like certain step ups, or if you go certain um, built-in gains calculations and stuff, is they look at depreciation allowed or allowable, and so if you're not taking the minimum depreciation, the IRS is they're sort of still considering it as you could have taken it and you just didn't, and we're still going to give you the bogey for it. So it's the amount of depreciation actually claimed on your tax returns, or the amount you could have claimed even if you didn't, and so you get this terrible basis adjustment. It's painful.
Yeah, you can owe money when you sell your house.
Even though you never got the benefit of
The
the
deduction.
deduction. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
We agree. I'm assuming that we agree, but we're just gonna reiterate it, put it out there so that we can get rid of this elephant in the room. Houses depreciate.
Depreciation is real. Yes.
Okay. To everybody out there that says a home only appreciates, a house falls down around you, ladies and gentlemen. If don't fix the roof leak and see what happens, okay? A house falls apart.
I live
It
in a home.
depreciates.
My home was built in 1963 for $40. You know what I mean? And yes, I enjoy the depreciation element of my personal home, on a weekly basis. I find out, even though someone's gone through and gone to great lengths to try to restore it, they constantly fall apart. And now they cost more to repair than they ever cost to build, 70 years ago, as it were. It's insane.
Exactly. That's why if you're looking to buy a house and you can do it through, even if you're only living in part of it, and you can write off depreciate a majority of the structure, the house can do some type of cost segregation, which we'll talk about next. But be able to write off your expenses. You have to go out and buy a lawnmower. You have to cut the grass. Maybe these are common area elements. You have to get somebody to plow the snow. You have to do repairs and upgrades and updates and change out a washing machine. Maybe that is a common element. All of these types of things you can, if you do it properly, following the rules, you can write those items off where you couldn't do it as just a homeowner. So when is it important to do these types of things in your life? Certainly before you get married, before you have kids, or even if you are married or you're living with somebody or whatever, you're going to buy a place together, but you don't have kids yet, or people do it with kids. But I'm just saying, if you're young and you're starting out, you could take advantage of a lot of the real estate investment benefits that these big corporations do. The law is written, the IRS code is written to benefit you as well. You just need that knowledge. And by the way, Mitchell, all of your links are in the show notes. Anybody that has any questions for Mitchell, reach out. I'm sure he's open for business, right? I mean, you're taking clients, right?
Yep. We do a bunch over here. So yeah, the same story of, owning a small business is the best tax deal in America. Once you become a real estate owner, you're into small business, and you're into the kind of oldest small business out there. And you get the headaches of the calls in the middle of the night, but you get the savings of not of of all of these things that exist in your life, especially to your point, if you kind of house hack your way into a triplex or something. My wife and I looked at doing that forever, and this was in 2014. you go look back and every house we would have bought in I should have just bought 100 houses in 2014, it turns out, because they've all two and a half in value. But we ended up, buying this townhome with the water heater that exploded in the attic, and that turned out to be a good deal. But everything was a good deal. Who knew? Um, but yeah. So I've always had my mindset around this idea, especially when I was young, before I had kids, of go put a small down payment, take a bunch of leverage, fix the thing up, get some people paying you, make the numbers work, and get going at it.
Yeah. Cost segregation. How long has that been around?
Oh, shoot. Since 2001. So, 2001, we were in the dot-com bust, and then we had 9/11. And that's when they came out and had the great idea that it might have been around before then, but this is when it was popularized because we got bonus depreciation. And so, you could always cost segregate your $50 million R&D lab, and you would want to do that because you would want to separate the long life from the short life. But that's equipment, but when they started looking at rules for being able to bonus depreciate leasehold improvements and bonus depreciate certain property, then people got clever. I mean, so this was 2001, and this was when buying a Ford F-150 became the new thing, or the Chevy Tahoe, because you could bonus depreciate your truck. You could just drive it off the lot and pay them $1,000 and go deduct whatever trucks cost back then, 25 grand. Yeah, exactly. Now it's now they're 100. But yeah, and they last 5 years and they're 100. But we won't go there. That's not what this show's about. But so ultimately, people got smart and started to go, well, they're not letting, so there's this 1245 personal business property is what they call it, which sounds confusing, and it is. But, that's the short life. That's the 15-year landscaping, the 5-year, carpet, the 7-year light fixture. So when you take one of those blueprint exploded diagram parts of a house and you look at every stick and every brick on its own, people got smart and started to say, I want to assign lives to all these short life properties, and then I want to assign values to all of these long life properties, and I want to take all the short life property and depreciate it today as quick as I can. And so we'll talk about recapture, and recapture is just as real as depreciation and shouldn't be hand waved away. But what people started to figure out is, oh, I can take my equity that I'm going to go buy a property with, and then I can go bonus depreciate as much as I can, as quick as I can. And the dollar that I put down as equity can get as close to 75 cents or $1.50 or whatever it is. And I can go get a deduction like it's like it's a 401k. But it's not locked up until I'm 59 and a half, and it's not, and I can go 1031 it, and I can go do all this stuff and have flex, and I can go borrow money against it and refi out against it and do all these things that I can't quite do with a retirement account out there.
Yeah. So for everybody listening, what Mitchell's saying is this is a way for somebody to accelerate this depreciation where carpet doesn't last 27 and a half years. So when they are saying, hey, look, we know that carpet's not going to last 27 and a half years. You're going to replace it 3 or 4 times before that happens. So we will let somebody like Mitchell's company come in, and basically they will analyze the entire property. They'll have some boots on the ground, take a bunch of pictures. I've done this, had this done myself, and they'll analyze the entire property, and then they'll do their behind the scenes work and say, this is what you can depreciate year 1, which if you're making money and you owe taxes at the end of the year, you can take this all at once. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, I don't, my tax liability kind of went away that year, or, it's been reduced a lot because of this amount of accelerated depreciation. But what Mitchell's also saying is the recapture is a bitch. So what happens is if you sell it, that all those deductions that you've taken advantage of are coming back on you as income, essentially, that you're going to be retaxed on unless you kick that property into a 1031 exchange to where you can roll it again and again and again and again. And there are a lot of real estate investors that say you never sell your real estate, and if you do, you 1031 until you die. And am I right? I mean, that's what they say.
Yeah, because when you die, the most beautiful thing in the world happens, which is all of your assets go through your estate, and if your estate is less than $14 million or 28 if you're married, it all gets stepped up and passed on to your heirs. So, yeah,
Tax free.
tax free. Yes,
Right.
yes, and stepped up means like your son now gets this house that you're a boomer and you paid 40 grand for a house in 1970, and now your son gets it and it's worth $780,000, and he gets it at $780,000 like he bought it, and he gets to go start bonus depreciating it tomorrow like you just built it. So it's again, I didn't make the tax code, but this is just how it works.
This is why the rich keep getting richer, guys. This is why if you're playing two sets of rules here, right? There's the rules if you're focusing on how to use the rules and the codes to your advantage, like the wealthy people do.
Yeah.
You get wealthy this way. You don't necessarily start out this way, but you have to look at each one of these opportunities and say, I can either be woe is me right now today, and I can say, well, I can't get myself into a home, or, hey, I'm paying a landlord X amount of dollars, which, by the way, isn't bad. There's a right time to rent in people's life.
Yeah.
It's not throwing money away. But if you have an opportunity where you can buy something where you can add an accessory dwelling or take advantage of a renovation loan, and then you can turn part of that, live in the small part, turn the bigger part into an income producing property, take advantage. You open the door to all of these advantages, and it's not that expensive. Cost segregation is not a very expensive thing to go through. And I'm sure you guys do it as well, Mitchell. But if you get audited by the IRS, usually the cost seg company takes care of that for you. They meet with the you give the whatever documents to back it up. Is that right?
Yeah, that certainly. So, I mean, look, when I was looking at all of these fourplexes in 2014, I was listening to Bigger Pockets, and I was trying to do the 1% rule, and that interest rates were 6% back then, kind of like they are today, but just prices were a bunch cheaper, and or just the property values have gone up, and the interest rates have gone up, and the rents have not gone up commensurately. So you're going to have to get sharp and get clever if you want to hack your way into owning something. But for you to, just give up and say, there's nothing out there, there's no way to make it. Like, I don't see it. I don't know. You may, I'd be interested in what you think, Todd, but like, I don't see just prices like crashing 50% in the next 2 years for any like structural reason. I mean, it might happen. Crazy things happen, but I think this is kind of the new order for a while. Uh, I think this whole asset class of like real estate has been financialized. And the crazy thing is like this whole little tax game that people play in real estate, they play it all the way up through billion-dollar businesses of borrowing money and trying to take deductions and trying to kind of create these deferred tax liabilities, and everything's financialized that's out there today. But just like, I talk to people who are going, okay, I'm going to go borrow a bunch of money and run a boat charter company. And it's like, the problem with doing that is your boats are going to be worthless in 5 years. And yeah, you get all this depreciation, but you're just buying crap that's worthless. So, pardon me. But, where a house is still going to be a house 5 years from now and be worth some kind of, if you can go at, or look, if you can go buy a little retail shopping center and you can go put good tenants into it and you can increase the net operating income of that retail shopping center, you can still add millions of dollars of value. And you don't have to be a big corporation and you don't have to be a genius, but it's hard work. So those things still trade on a cap rate and on the net income of the center, and you can go add tons of value if you can fix it up and try to convince someone to be your tenant who's a good tenant. So
Yeah, and I think so. Just to unpack one of the things that you said, and then I want to address what I think as far as the market going forward. When Mitchell was saying the 1%, when he was looking at renting a house and looking for that 1%, my rule of thumb has always been when I was in residential rentals was that the 1% rule sort of was a quick calculation that you could make that chances are if you got 1%, then you would be making money.
Meaning if the monthly rent was $1,500, you could pay $150,000 for the property and get out.
Right.
So if you could get $6,000 in the duplex or triplex, you could go pay $600 and it made sense, right?
Right. And the way I always figured it wasn't just what I paid, but what I would be all in until I could put a tenant in there. So if I bought a home for $150,000 and I had to put $100,000 in it to get it rent ready, then that's, and I'm talking about my purchase costs, my transfer recordation fees, any real estate commissions that were paid, anything, all in. If I bought it at 150, all cost in, and I put 100,000, 250, if I couldn't rent that house for $2,500 a month, I wasn't interested. So that, like Mitchell's saying, that's that 1% rule that really says, okay, well, after you pay property taxes, after you pay your water bill, after you add a little vacancy rate in there, if you get a good tenant in there, chances are you're going to be making a profit or at least making money every single month. Less than that, and I've watched, Mitchell, I've seen people go down to 40 cents, 50 cents. They were hoping that they would get that annual appreciation, grab the house, cash out in 2 years or whatever, roll it up, and it burned them, right? We watch these rates, just capitalization rates, which I don't want to get into too deep in the weeds on, but that 1% rule was kind of solid. Now, just to say, Mitchell, what I think on the housing market, we're seeing it crash right now. It's not everywhere. It's very market specific. There's certain subdivisions are still selling for 1 or 2 offers or 3 offers as a multiple bid offer. It's not 25 anymore, at least what I'm experiencing in these hot neighborhoods. The first 3 to 5 days, you're getting all of it. But we are seeing it soften. We are seeing home inspections coming back. We're seeing that sellers are paying for repairs and maintenance costs to get their house sold. Well, that's a price reduction right there because that was non-existent for almost 5 years. We're also seeing that certain areas, if there is distress, if we had a 50% price crash in a lot of markets, it would only take us back to 2019 prices. So when you're looking at it, that is how high things have gone in the last 5 years. However, leaving all of that aside, back in the 2008 crisis, the only thing that we saw crash 50, 60% back then were very distressed properties that nobody else other than a real estate investor would mess with, right? Because it needed too much work. It had mold, it had problems, structural issues, whatever, needed a roof and trusses because it was, the whole roof and structural system was rotted. But I do see where there's opportunities, and what I really try and teach people how to do, especially if they're trying to get into the market, want to accumulate wealth through real estate, be a mom pop type of landlord, take advantage of the IRS codes that they can take advantage of by house hacking or having other people living in the house with them and creating income. They're great ways to start, but I also look for what is the highest and best use of a specific property? Because these are mistakes that a lot of agents make. For instance, There are a lot of agents that don't know anything about commercial real estate, and they're selling a home that could actually have a higher and better use by putting a business in there where you can get more rent. Maybe you could still live there and have a commercial / residential dwelling, but you could take advantage of this, but it's not being priced as a commercial property, and it has a very high zoning, like a business local or business major or something where it could be really a lot more than what they're selling it for. Also, if it can be subdivided, if I can buy a house where I can break that up because the density zoning allows me to increase density, and I can break that up and get an extra lot, or make a 1 or 2 unit dwelling a 3 or 4 unit dwelling. Now I'm really building value in a property that people aren't seeing, right? You have to be out there scouring like a professional to find these types of things, which is possible, right? Especially if you have a good agent. But anyway, that a little tangent there.
Todd, I live in Houston, Texas. We're the largest city by far in the world with zero zoning. So I live in just an insane asylum where you can you could have a church and a Chipotle and a strip
Dog
club,
kennel.
and a dog kennel, and then a school, and it just doesn't matter. So I mean, I don't know how the DMV is doing relative to where you are. I mean, Houston is just Houston and Dallas are still kind of hot. So I'm a little desensitized to kind of what the market is doing nationwide. It's a wild time.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of HOAs?
I mean, we have these little townships is what they do is they like HOAs come in, especially in the tertiary, like if you're going to build a new neighborhood out on the frontier, you're going to have an HOA. Or in town, what happens is they either do deed restrictions or these little townships bubble up and start to push on what people are allowed to do. So it's a weird market out here. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. Let's talk about short-term rentals for a minute, and then I want to get into businesses and whether people should have real estate on their balance sheet or not. But when we're talking about short-term rentals, what does the IRS say about you being there? So I know a lot of people have rentals, short-term vacation rentals, and they're like, I'm going to buy this and then I'm going to use it for 2 or 3 weeks or 2 months out of the year myself, and I'm going to stay for free. And I'm just going to say, well, I'm just down there sanding some walls and painting some things. And so what does the IRS say about what you can and cannot do with a short-term rental?
Yeah. So you catch the drift of, so the great thing about real estate is you can go buy it, you can, put some money down, you can go borrow money, you can go create this huge paper loss year one. We've already talked about this. The problem is that, people started doing this in the 1980s. Wall Street guys were buying buildings and creating these huge paper losses and trying to offset their salaries and all this stuff. And they reformed the tax code in 1986, and they started to go, look, real estate, rental income is passive by its nature. So when the primary source of income in this business is rental income, this is a passive business, and the income is passive. And passive income or loss, as it were, passive losses can only be offset by passive income. So you can't go take your business income or your ordinary W-2 income and go offset passive losses unless you make less than $125,000. Like there's kind of, but these are just general terms. And so you go, great. Well, now I created all these passive losses, but I can't use them. Well, short-term rentals fix this, right? So the IRS basically said, if the average rent stay is less than 7 days, this is no longer a rental property. This is not rental income in nature. It's business income. You are now running a hotel, and you have to provide substantial services along, you're cleaning the toilet, you're turning the units, you're now in a business, which is this short-term rental business. So like when Airbnb was hot and when debt was cheap and when stuff was flying, people were out there doing this. They were either renting properties and then Airbnb-ing them and trying to run this rental arbitrage game, or they were buying properties and Airbnb-ing it and covering their mortgage. And if you materially participate in that business and this is a business, you can go take the losses similar to, and we'll get to this, but it's just like if I own a CPA firm and I own the business, or I own the mansion on Main Street, and it's my business property. I get to deduct those losses against my business income because it's like owning a forklift. And if I live above the garage and operate the business on Main Street, we get to talk about splitting it, the usage of property the same way we were talking about it earlier. And so the great thing about short-term rental is, you can go take your vacation property and you can go, rent it out and spend some time in it and achieve material participation, which you can do that. You can spend 500 hours a year or 100 hours and more time than anybody else and materially participate in this property, especially year one, depreciate the cred out of it, and then, just run it as an ongoing property. But to your point, Todd, you cannot go spend more than 14 days of personal use in that property. Or, one of my friends joked about that. He was like, so, tax fraud in the modern era is like staying at the wrong beach house. That's what's going to get you thrown into jail. You go to the wrong property. But it's true. They don't want you to go use business property for substantial personal use. And so to your point, Todd, you can have work days. So you can stay at the property and then you can do substantial work of sand in the walls, but you have to go get a log. You have to log your time and log your work and really do a good job of keeping that clear and not stepping over the line, because that's Airbnbs fall into this thing of like, they kind of require more administrative infrastructure. I talk about this idea a lot of return on hassle, which is like, look, if you're young and you can go buy a beach house and you can go rent it out and it's worth your time and you're willing to like shoulder all that risk and price adjust it in, and if you go bankrupt, so what? Then you may want to go do that. But when the doctor who's making $1 million a year comes to me and says, "Hey, I want to go do this, and my wife's going to run it," I'll ask them, "Does your wife want to do this? Because if your wife doesn't want to do this, you may not want to go down this road, because it's a money loser." But what it allows you to do is take a property that you want to buy anyway and kind of soften it's like buying a jet and then chartering it. You're not going to make money doing that. Like that's not a money making activity. It may make buying a jet cheaper, which if that's what you want to do, we can do that. But you can also just go rent a jet. You can also just go stay at a hotel. And by the time by the time you're done, hotels are pretty nice. They just clean the room for you and you just show up and you just swipe your credit card. But so that's the big balance in my view of like, this is a great way to go get property and it's a great way to get some tax efficiency at it. But this is work.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think as someone that has been involved in both short-term and long-term rentals, a short-term rental is a job.
Yes.
I mean, it's a job. And it's risky enough having a long-term rental and making certain that you're putting the right tenant in the house that doing the due diligence and the background checks and the credit checks and not feeling sorry for a tale of woe with that and waiving these things. I mean, I've learned so many different things from people through the years and my own sort of rules of thumb as well. but it's so risky anyway, putting a long-term tenant in, hoping to God that you're going to get your money and they're going to take care of the place and they're not going to tear it apart and urinate all over your floors. And I mean, which I've had happen before. And, spending $30,000-$40,000 on getting it rent ready again and just going 2 years in the hole.
Yeah.
But you're getting a new tenant every single day or every 3 days in an Airbnb, and chances are they're coming to party.
Yeah, and how about those COVID stories when folks just decided not to vacate? They just said, "You know what? I live here now because there's a yeah." So ultimately, it can be great. It can be a great. The other thing, people are doing this because they're trying to juice returns. They're trying to get back to the 1% rule, and they look at the increase in potential top line revenue versus long term renting it, and they abstract out all the risk. Or they don't price in the risk effectively, in my view. So it can be a tough. People do this in 30A in Florida, and they go own a big fancy beach house, and then they have the management company of the HOA go rent it out for them, and it's just an offset of cost. It's a $4 million beach house. They're not making money on this, but if they can get a few $20,000 weeks like that, that's fantastic. But that's different from rolling up your sleeves and owning an Airbnb by the airport and trying to make it work. I mean, that's a tough business.
Yeah, and they forget that your furniture that you're putting in there is getting destroyed. So people think they're making money, and then they have to spend $30,000 again replacing all the furniture in 5 years because nobody wants to stay there because the couch is disgusting, the chairs are disgusting, your dishes are broken.
You're losing 2 towels a week. Yeah, exactly. Like, so, but I mean, that's the foray into, hey, I'm not a real estate pro and I want to still enjoy these sweet benefits. Well, it's either make your wife a pro, which again, if your wife wants to be a pro, that's great. If your wife doesn't want, or if your spouse doesn't want to be a pro, then you probably don't want to do that. That'll complicate your life. Or it's own real estate for your business. If you run a tire shop and you can go buy an industrial building and operate a tire shop, if you can go operate a gas station and you can go buy the gas station, you can make a lot of money. Like, you think operating a gas station is not a good job? There's a Twitter guy, gas biz guy, who's just made his whole life of buying a gas station, turning it around, hiring an operator, moving to the next one, and he did that for 20 years, and he's made a life out of it. So you can go do that, or if you're in the middle of America, most physicians who have a big radiology practice, they own the hospital, or they own the medical office with all the equipment in it, because one year they make enough money and they go, what can we do? And their CPA goes, buy that building. And then they do it, but they only need one building. So you talk about should businesses have real estate on their balance sheet? Uh, Peter Maluk from Creative Planning would tell you no, or that, you go look at the biggest companies, you go look at Starbucks, and they go sell all their property to some REIT that wants to run a bunch of property because Starbucks is a better business than the real estate of Starbucks, and they want to separate those two to juice earnings and all that. But that's not us. We're just trying to go to work and have something when we retire. And so, business owners really do well to buy. They go in their biggest tax years and they buy, some real estate, and they get leverage. Like, you just can't get leverage like that in business any other way, to go borrow, at 6%, $1 million and pay it off over the long run on something that, as long as it goes up in value, you're a genius, because you have these huge levered returns that you just can't get other places. But, it's a good tax sink,
Mitchell, I do commercial real estate, and more often than not, I have people that call me and they say, hey, I want to sell my business. They don't have real estate, but they want to sell their business. And there's a lease involved. And so it puts me into the position of, hey, I can help you sell your business because it involves real estate, it involves a lease, and trying to renegotiate that lease or getting a substitute guarantor to take over that lease in order to buy my client's business. But the problem is your business is only worth so much because you don't own the real estate. You own a lease, and that new business owner is like, well, what if they jack the rent on me, or what if this happens or that happens? And so they don't want to give you the money for your 30-year business, even though you have a Rolodex of, not everybody knows what a Rolodex is, but you have a
You have a customer
book of business.
Yeah, a book of business.
Book of business. And so what happens is, then I'll get the property, or the business owner will say, man, I wish I would have bought a building 20 years ago. I could sell my business and rent it to the new owners. Or I could just sell the whole thing and get so much more money for my business. But there are differences, like you had clearly stated, a Starbucks or a CVS or a pharmacy, a corner pharmacy. They don't want to own the real estate. They want to be able to take 100% write off of that rent, right, and then depreciate or sort of take the leasehold improvement aspect of it, the money that they put into the building to build it out, and they depreciate that type of thing. So where does it, other than what I just said, if you want to sell your business, owning that building makes sense, but where does it not make sense from a tax standpoint?
I mean, again, it's just, if you're going to have to put some equity in, and you're going to have to fix your location if you're going to own a building. And from a tax standpoint, it makes sense a lot of the time. But if your business can grow faster, look, if you have some hotshot business, if you have an architecture firm and you're doubling every year, you can't really go buy real estate because you're going to outgrow it, and then you're going to be stuck with this building, and you're going to have to sell it, or you're going to have to go rent it, and But like there's, I think about, by my old office, there's this place called Sound Waves. There were like 7 of them in Houston. They sold tapes and records and CDs and Sound Waves, and then they kind of started selling surf stuff and skate stuff. It's still there. It's still open on, in some of kind of the higher price areas of Houston, and now they sell kind of like skate shoes and stuff, and no one goes there. They own the real estate, like, I promise you. Or sometimes you go to a restaurant and you're like, how is this restaurant still here? They own the real estate. So it gives your business durability of, like, if you're going to go into the restaurant business, to your point, like, if you're running a restaurant is like the hardest business in the world. And if you're successful, and what success means is that in 10 years, they're going to jack up your rent 4 times. Like, I'm going to pass on that. I'm not going to run a location-based business where I don't have kind of infinite term on how I get to stay at my location without having some other person. And so I need a lease with an option to purchase, even if it's at an astronomical rate, or I need some kind of permanency, because I'm not going to be jammed out of my location. But if I have a company that needs the equity and can use the equity and can grow forever, faster than real estate can grow, that's the kind of business decision. But ultimately, if small, most accounting firms in the middle of the country that are big accounting firms, like, own their buildings. Most accounting firms in Manhattan don't own their buildings. And it's just, what does the building market look like, and what does the rent market look like? And if I can ultimately capture the real estate that I'm going to operate out of for the next 30 years, you generally try to do it. And again, it's just one of these, like, I had a broker call me to try to sell me a building down the street from my office. And I went back to him and was like, hey, you you go try to sell buildings to business owner buyers. let me tell you about bonus depreciation. I went to their office and did a whole presentation and tried to give them the full slide that they put into their deck because they go try to target owner occupiers. So it's a good deal out there. It's just one of the only ways to access that tax leverage, I should say.
My experience from commercial banking, dealing with commercial banks, you go out, you buy a rental property, they're going to want you to put at least 20% down, probably 30% down.
Yeah, today more. Yeah,
and more, and
well, at high interest. Yeah,
it depends on your experience too.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're somebody that's in that business and you have 40 doors in your portfolio, and you've been dealing with that bank for quite some time, chances are. And by the way, guys, just a little side note. If you're dealing with a regional bank and you're getting into buying a commercial property, even if it's under a 4-unit building, if you're not living there, it's still considered commercial, okay, from a banking standpoint. You want to get in with a bank that's going to have a high borrowing limit per borrower. And a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of regional banks, you can only borrow $3 million, $3.5 million. They cap out. You want to make sure that you're growing with a bank that has a very high, because if you're successful and you want $10 million or $15 million, they may not be able to continue lending you money. And so your relationship kind of is capped out. But if you're buying a rental property for somebody to live in, chances are you're going to put 30% down. It's a lot of money. If you're buying a building, like Mitchell said, you're going to have equity into that building. You have to put money down, but it's a lot less. I know banks that will do 90, 95% lending on a building that your business is going to be the guarantor, especially if you've been in business for quite some time and you're making profit, right? If you're losing money every year, you owe the IRS money and the tax stated money, forget about it. You're not getting a mortgage to buy a building. But if you could say, look, my business has been around for 8-10 years, we make money, you're allowed to lose money. I think, Mitchell, you would be a better rule than me. It's 5 or 7 years. I think they expect you to get up and running. But once you get to 10 or 12 years, you better be showing that you're making a little bit of money, right?
A lot of times they'll add back the depreciation to look at your actual cash flow. I have a client who and a friend who's a big real estate developer, and they constantly buy these buildings and say it's going to be their office, and they office in it for 3 years, and then they go to the next one and they do it again and they do it again, and he ends up holding a lot of them or redeveloping or selling them. But yeah, they always get in on the owner occupied train because it's lenders know that if you have a going concern operating business that makes good money, you're going to have a rent line item. And that if you're buying a business or if you're buying a building that can, absorb the rent line item of the business, that you're going to stick around for a while and you're going to keep paying them. You're not going to want to go out of business. So
yeah, you're going to pay the rule of thumb with commercial real estate is you're typically going to pay your business expense, your business lease or mortgage payment before you pay your house. Because guess what? You'd be stupid if you didn't, right? Yep. Because if you don't pay your business mortgage or your business lease, your business rent, I'm dealing with this right now with a tenant. But if you don't pay your landlord the commercial lease, you're in bad shape, right? Because no business, no money.
Number one, right? Payroll. Number two,
right,
the internet. Number three, pay your landlord.
Right.
Yep.
Good stuff. Hopefully, guys, you're getting a lot of value from this. We'd love to know your comments, questions, whatever. I mean, this is a lot. This is not an easy thing, but it's not an easy thing to explain. What Mitchell does is very complex. By the way, you have to be very smart to be a CPA. I mean, out of all the friends of mine that I have I know a couple CPAs, and it's the hardest freaking test to take. It's hard. I think it's harder than the bar, right? And you have outer body experiences taking that exam and whatever, but it's all numbers. Not everybody can play with numbers, and when you start talking about numbers, they get glazed over. They're like, But you know what? There are ways. Believe me, if you look at And then I heard somebody say that this was bullshit. It wasn't true. And I don't believe it. I think it is true. But I think most of the millionaires today in America, or billionaires, have made their wealth in one way or another through real estate investments. And we know that, I mean, sure, there are the businesses that just took off and did very well, but
there's the tech people. That's the new wave. But the old wave was these guys who are legacy sports team owners, and these guys, and the current president of the United States. These are real estate people, and a lot of money was made over a long time in real estate, and everything's kind of expensive right now, but it's not going away. Everyone has to live somewhere. We're not going to go live in the metaverse just yet. We're still going to live. We're not going to Mars. I hate to break it to you.
What I think was it. Well, I think it was Jeff Bezos that said, if you think that Elon Musk can go to Mars, or that you even want to go to Mars, go live on Mount Everest for a month. And if you survive that, then maybe you'd survive a trip to Mars. Who knows?
Go to Phoenix. Go to Phoenix in August.
Good point. Good point. Well, Mitchell, I think this is a great conversation. I love having it with you. A lot to talk about. I guess that some of the key takeaways here, guys, is number one, Mitchell's information is in the show notes. Reach out to him. He has a cool website. He has some download stuff that you can also get, and reach out to him. Reach out to me if you have questions about getting into real estate from an investment standpoint. And I think that there are a lot of people out there. We have to start being more creative. We can't just, we have a lot of people that can't afford a house, but there are a lot of people that can afford a way. And there are creative ways to make things happen. And I do believe that if you start thinking like that, and you start breaking it down and saying, hey, look, I'm young, or I'm single, or I don't care if I live with other people right now. I'm willing. I mean, my gosh, people are living in vans, or I talked to one guy, he's living in an RV in the back of his house. He bought a house. He moved out of the house, put people in the house, and he's living in the extended driveway in an RV in the backyard, because that's how committed he was to getting his foot in the door, to making something happen, and to sacrifice something in order to improve, or, take advantage of tax deductions, making a way to make it happen. And you can do it too. So, guys, we always appreciate you following along. And certainly if you like the video, you can let Mitchell and I know that you did by smashing that thumbs up. But anything parting, Mitchell, you'd like to say?
Yeah. Follow me. I'm most active on Twitter at Baldridge CPA. We have the accounting business. We have RE cost seg. I think we have a discount for your listeners. Just email us at RE cost seg, or go to our site. Tell us you heard us here, and we'd love that. And, just to echo your comments, I've met 100 people in the last 5 years who have completely changed their lives on one real estate deal. I met a guy who bought a half vacant storage facility, filled it up, built on the back of it again. And I mean, this guy's made $10 million. It just life-changing money for one deal. And so it's an incredible business, but yeah, you have to think kind of, if you just do the basic thing, you're going to get the kind of basic result, which a lot of people do for a long time and make a lot of money. If you can think kind of two deviations from the mean, or if you can get creative, or if you can find an opportunity, a diamond in the rough, and they're still out there, take that house and turn it into a duplex, you can hit a grand slam. I mean, it's a good business. So
100%. Well, we hope to get you back sometime soon.
Yeah.
And continue this conversation. Right. Thanks so much for watching. If you like the video, you can let us know by smashing that thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, please consider doing so now. Hit that alert bell. You'll know every time we upload content just like this. Keep those comments and questions coming. And one of the biggest compliments you can do for us all here at Sachs Realty is to share our channel and this video with your family and friends. This will help us to continue to build this amazing online community with viewers just like yourself. See you next time. Sachs Realty, Maryland broker number 607720, office number 443-318-4514, equal housing opportunity.